Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Hello and welcome. I am Dr. Jishnu Bhattacharya, an associate professor in Mechanical Engineering Department, IIT Kanpur. So we are having the tutorial session, problem solving session for thermodynamics, and the book that you are seeing on the screen, that's the book we follow in IIT Kanpur for undergraduate thermodynamics teaching, the book by Cengel and Bowles. So if you are following, in first 6 tutorials, we have covered few chapters. First, we covered the first chapter, Introduction and Basic Concepts. Then we covered energy, energy transfer, and energy analysis. Okay. And then the third chapter was big. It was properties of pure substances. So we have dedicated 2 tutorials on that. And then the fourth chapter we covered, which is energy analysis of closed systems. Okay. And the fifth chapter was mass and energy analysis of control volumes. This is the chapter we were solving problems from. And today also, on the 7th session of the tutorial, what we will do, we will solve 2 problems from this 5th chapter, that is control volume analysis, and then we will go to the next chapter, which is the second law of thermodynamics, chapter 6. Okay, and there also we will take up 2 problems, which we will finish it in the next tutorial. This chapter 6, it's an important chapter. We will finish it in the next tutorial. So this tutorial will be comprising of 2 problems from chapter 5 and 2 problems from chapter 6. So as I have told you earlier, that please follow the mouse that's you can see on the screen. That will help you look at the right portion of the screen, so that you can follow what I am saying or where I am looking at. Okay, so let's start with the first problem. So as I have told you, this problem will be from chapter 5. So what is the problem statement? Let me zoom a little bit. So problem statement is the following: air at 300 Kelvin and 100 kilopascal steadily flows into a hair dryer having electrical work input of 1500 watt. Okay, so on the right hand side you can see the schematic diagram. This is as if it's a hair dryer circuit. From one side air is sucked in, and the temperature and pressure, which is ambient condition, you can see 300 Kelvin means 27 degrees centigrade, and 100 kPa is 1 atmosphere is closely 100 kPa. So atmospheric air is taken in by the hair dryer, and you are putting some electrical heater input, electrical work input through the electrical heater, and that amount is given 1500 watt. Okay, so because of the size of the air intake, the inlet velocity is negligible. Okay, so kinetic energy we can neglect, the velocity is small. Now the air temperature and velocity at the exit are given. What are they? It's 80 degrees centigrade. So ambient 27 degree air is taken in, and when it exits, it is heated up to 80 degrees centigrade, and the velocity is also increased, that is 21 meter per second, and that velocity increase is done by a fan inside. Okay, so whenever you see This is for hair dryer, where you need a gust of hot air, and even for the blowers that we use for room heating, they also have one electrical heater and one fan. And often this fan and the heating coil, they have to be put on together. If fan is switched off, then the electrical heating coil becomes too hot, and thus it may get burned out. Okay, so this kind of circuit you have seen in many other places. Now the flow process is both constant pressure and adiabatic. So the flow process, the pressure is not increased. Okay, so fan is just increasing the velocity, and it is also adiabatic. So the whole thing is, you can think of it is to be insulated, or the heat transfer that's happening to the atmosphere, that's very negligible. Okay, that assumption you can make. So what you need to determine is the mass flow rate of air and the volume flow rate at the exit. So you know the velocity at the exit, but you don't know what is the volume flow rate. So for that you require the specific volume as well, right? So we need to find out all these things. So first thing first, what we have to note here. So whenever you are given a problem, you have to think of what are the given things from the statement. Okay, so first thing here is steady flow process. Okay, so that steady flow energy equation, or first law applicable to a steady flow process, that's what we need to apply here. And then no heat loss or gain, because it's given to be adiabatic. And then the inlet velocity is negligible. Okay, inlet velocity is negligible and outlet velocity is not, because inlet velocity you are taking from the atmosphere and the velocity is negligible, and that is why the kinetic energy input is zero. And the outlet velocity, you are actually increasing the velocity by use of a fan, so that is not negligible. So what thing we require, this is air, so we need to look up the property for air, and you have seen how to do that in earlier tutorials. So the first thing is the gas constant for air is 0.287 kilopascal meter cube per kg Kelvin, which you can also say kilojoule per kg Kelvin. Kilojoule is same as kilopascal meter cube. Okay, and the specific heat at constant pressure, that's 1.005 kilojoule per kg. So these values are pretty standard. I mean, you will use it multiple times. So better for this kind of, for air or water, what is the specific heat, what is the gas constant. So these things, if you can remember readily, so that will save you some time in the exam. Okay, you don't have to look up the table. Like these are the values which are of that frequency. Okay, so please remember them. Now, no change in potential energy, right? Potential energy change happens when you have a change in datum level, right, or height. That is not happening here, so potential energy change is negligible. And then the values of enthalpy and velocity, these are changing. Enthalpy, why? Because whenever we talk about a flowing stream, the energy content of that is expressed through enthalpy. Okay, so enthalpy values at different pressure and temperature, all those things we need to find out. Let's see how we can do that. Okay, so if we now look at the energy balance, here nothing is, this is a steady flow process, so nothing is getting stored. It is just whatever is coming in, it will go out. First law, simple. Okay, so whatever is coming in means what? The m dot into h1, that's the inlet enthalpy content of the airstream. Now what else you are putting in is the electrical heater, so that is work input in the form of electrical heating. So that's the input. The left hand side is the input. And what is going out? So again, the hot air stream is having certain enthalpy. So that is m dot h2 plus the velocity is increased. So now you have v2 square by 2. That's the kinetic energy part of the stream. So these two have to match each other. So if you solve this, what you can do, the electrical work input, that's what you need to put it in one side. So m dot into h2 minus h1, that's the change in enthalpy of the airstream, plus the velocity or the kinetic energy part of the outgoing airstream. So now this h2 minus h1, what you can write is Cp into T2 minus T1, right? So enthalpy of a gas or any stream, you can write to be specific heat into temperature. Okay, so H2 minus H1, you can write Cp into T2 minus T1. So from this, you can solve for m dot, which will be W dot in divided by Cp T2 minus T1 plus V2 square by 2, right? So everything on in this equation in the right hand side are given. So this electrical work, the Cp you have looked up, the temperatures of inlet outlet are given, even the outlet velocity is also given. So everything is given. You can do the calculation and find the mass flow rate of air, which is 0.028 kg per second. Okay, that's the first answer we are looking at, and we got it. Now the second one. Second query was what? It was asked what is the volume flow rate at exit. And volume flow rate at exit means you have to know both the velocity as well as the mass flow rate. Okay, so volume flow rate at outlet is nothing but the mass flow rate into the specific volume at exit. Okay, so this mass flow rate contains the velocity as well, but that will be give you the volume flow rate when you multiply it with specific volume. And specific volume, how we get it? That where we will use the ideal gas law. So the specific volume at exit will be R into T2 by P2. That means at state 2, what are the temperature and pressure? We will use it, and we know R, we have looked up the table. We know that T2, which is 353 Kelvin, and P2 is 100 kPa. P2 did not change, right? So it remained at 1 bar, and the temperature increased to 80 degrees centigrade. That means 353 Kelvin. So by doing this calculation, you will find the specific volume at exit to be 1.013 meter cube per kg. Okay. Now the volume flow rate will be the mass flow rate, which was the first answer. So here we have just found what is the mass flow rate, m dot 0.028 kg per second, and that the mass flow rate is multiplied by the specific volume at exit, and that's how you get the volume flow rate, which is 0.0284 meter cube per second. And this is the second answer we are after. Okay, so here always you check for the unit. Earlier also, in earlier tutorials, I told you that please write the units in full form and try to write it in the consistent system. Like the SI system is the most standard one that we use everywhere. So whenever you are writing an equation, so write the units also in the SI system. Okay, then what thing you will get? You will get an insight whether the units are getting cancelled out, whether they are matching with the quantity that you are after. So here you can see that volume flow rate, it is expected to have it in meter cube per second, right? Or some length cube per time unit, right? So here the meter cube per second unit is coming automatically, and that you can see from this equation. You are multiplying kg per second and meter cube per kg. So this kg cancels out and you have meter cube per second. Okay, so basically if you check, if you have this habit of checking the units, then you will find often we make mistakes. You can find those mistakes by checking the units. So please make it a habit of checking units in each step of your problem. Okay, so fine, that's the first problem we solved, and the next problem we'll solve, and that will also be from chapter 5, that means control volume analysis. So what is the next problem? Refrigerant R134A is throttled from the saturated liquid state. So I'll come in detail what we mean by throttled. Okay, so but let me just read it out first. Throttled from the saturated liquid state at 700 kPa to a pressure of 160 kPa. So just from this statement you can see throttling is reducing the pressure. That means it's 700 kPa to start with and throttled to a pressure of 160 kPa. So that means pressure is coming down in throttling. Now determine the temperature drop. So again you can see the temperature drops in a throttling process, and you have to determine the temperature drop during this process and the final specific volume of the refrigerant. Okay, so if you can see here the schematic diagram of the throttling process, which is nothing but a straight pipe through which the refrigerant is flowing, and you have a valve in between. Okay, and the valve you can open or close. So if you open it, the high pressure refrigerant here will flow to the next part, and it will come down to a lower pressure value, and during this process the temperature will also come down, and this is called a throttling process. So throttling process is nothing but a narrow a high pressure fluid is flowing through a narrow restriction and thereby losing pressure. Okay, so let's look at little bit about this throttling process, and this you will encounter many times in thermodynamics course and as an engineer in real life. Okay, particularly the first instance you will see it in the refrigeration cycle, and in the next chapter itself, in the next refrigeration cycle, you will see that throttling is an important part of the refrigeration cycle. So it is, what is it? It is an expansion process, because expansion process means the pressure comes down, right? Whenever you have a pressure drop, we can call it an expansion process. And this expansion process usually is the most common one is through turbine. Okay, when pressure comes down and you get some work out of it, we call it a turbine, right? But often this in refrigeration cycle, the work that you get out of a throttling process by installing a turbine in the expansion process is so minuscule that the cost of turbine does not match with that minuscule amount of work you get. So better we get rid of that work by simple throttling. Okay, and you can also see here from the schematic that it's a steady flow process. There is nothing going in or out and nothing changing with time, so it is a steady flow process. And the kinetic and potential energy changes are also negligible, because velocity does not change much, and even if it changes, the other quantities corresponding to that is negligible. Okay, and the potential energy also does not change. And this process is flow through a narrow restriction, right? So it is so fast and the area is so small that you cannot have, the fluid cannot have enough heat transfer. Okay, so we can also put the adiabatic assumption. Whenever a process is very fast, heat transfer time is small and the area is also very small. So that is why it does not have either time or enough area. So that is why heat transfer will be very minimal and we can assume it to be an adiabatic process. Okay, and as you can see that no work interaction is happening, pressure is coming down and that's it, no work is going out or coming in. Okay, now we'll see that the pressure drops along with this, the temperature also drops along with the pressure. Now we'll see why that is happening. And we have to quantify that also as per the problem statement. Okay, so let's go to the steady flow process analysis. And mass flow rate is constant throughout, so that automatically satisfies the mass flow mass balance. Now next, the energy balance is again whatever coming in has to go out. So as all of this Q, W, kinetic energy, potential energy are negligible as we discussed earlier. So what we are left with is just the enthalpy. So m dot H1 will be equal to m dot H2. And mass is also the same, no extra flow is coming from anywhere. So what we see, that throttling means the enthalpy stays constant, H1 equal to H2. Okay, it is often called isenthalpic process because enthalpy remains the constant. Just like isobaric means pressure remain constant, isothermal means temperature remain constant. So this is an isenthalpic process, the throttling. So whenever a throttling is mentioned, it is assumed that H stays the same. So please remember this. You will need it in many other occasions during the course of thermodynamics. Okay, so now this we obtain the H will constant, but what is the quantity of that H? Okay, that we have to find out. First one is state 1. State 1 is pressure given to be 700 kPa or 0.7 MPa and it is saturated liquid. Okay, so at this particular pressure we have to look up what is the condition of saturated liquid or what are the values corresponding to saturated liquid. So temperature is T saturated corresponding to 0.7 MPa and that is 26.69 degrees centigrade directly coming from the table. And we can also look up the H1, which is HF or enthalpy of fluid at this particular 0.7 MPa saturation pressure, right? So that is 88.82 kilojoule per kg. This we can look up. Now for state 2, what is given is the pressure. P2 is 160 kPa. What else is given? Nothing else is given, but from the energy balance we know the H2 and H1 are equal, right? So H2 equal to H1 and H1 we know that's 88.82 kilojoule per kg. So now we know two property values. One is pressure 160 kPa and H2 that is 88.82 kilojoule per kg. So now what we can see, at pressure 160 kPa we can look up the fluid or the liquid in specific enthalpy, that is 31.18, and the vapor specific enthalpy, that is 241.14. Okay, so you can see here that this H2 or the enthalpy value at the exit is coming in between these two values, right? Enthalpy of liquid and enthalpy of saturated vapor. So directly we can see that this is coming within that two-phase region. corresponding to pressure 160 kPa, right? So temperature, we can see that if it is within that two-phase region, the temperature will be T saturated. But now T saturated, so T2 will be T saturated corresponding to pressure 160 kPa. Okay, and that value is minus 15.6 degrees centigrade. Okay, so that is the temperature at inlet we have found out, that is 26.69, and at outlet we have also found out that's negative. So temperature dropped. Okay, it went to negative 15.6 degree centigrade. So what we need to find out is the temperature drop. So that delta T is T1 minus T2, and that you can find to be 42.3 degrees centigrade. So just to get the enthalpy same, the pressure dropped as well as the temperature dropped. So that is why whenever you have an expansion process or throttling valve there, you can see a temperature drop. Okay, so I think all of you have encountered a hissing sound from the household refrigerator, right? And it does not come all the time. Okay, it comes when the fridge is running and a hissing sound. That hissing sound is nothing but this throttling process. So a high pressure refrigerant is going through a narrow restriction and going to a low pressure state, and that is what that hissing sound represents. That's the throttling process, or that is the sound is coming from the throttling valve. Okay, now other than the temperature drop, what else we needed to find here? That was the quality at exit. Okay, and the specific volume at exit. So quality of the vapor, that we have seen that it's within the two-phase region, so we'll know that's a certain portion of that will be vapor and the rest will be liquid. Okay, so that's what we need to find out, the quality at exit, and that will also give us the specific volume. Okay, so X2, that would be the quality, will be equal to H2 minus H fluid divided by H vapor minus H fluid. Okay, so all these values you can look up from the table, and you can find the quality to be 0.2745. So basically 27.45% of the two-phase mixture will be vapor and the rest will be liquid. So that would be the composition of the refrigerant at the exit. And as soon as you know the quality of the vapor, you will also know what would be the specific volume at exit, just by adding the specific volume of fluid with the quality multiplied by the VFG, or the difference in specific volume of vapor and liquid. Okay, so that way you will know what is the specific volume, that is 0.0345 meter cube per kg, and that's what gives you the second answer. Okay, so this problem gives you a complete view of the throttling process, why it is an isenthalpic process, and why the temperature comes down due to pressure coming down. Okay, and what it physically means. Okay, let's go to the next problem, which is from the second law of thermodynamics. That means chapter 6 we are now coming in, and I am assuming that you have read through the chapter thoroughly and you have understood what a heat engine means, what a refrigerator or a heat pump means. Okay, so you have looked at a Carnot heat engine. What does a Carnot heat engine means? Okay, why it is ideal, and how to find out the Carnot efficiencies and coefficient of performance. So all these things you have learned in theory. Now we'll apply it in solving problems. So the third problem of this tutorial is on a Carnot heat engine. It says a Carnot heat engine receives heat at 900 Kelvin and rejects the waste heat to the environment at 300 Kelvin. So any heat engine, it takes up heat from certain high temperature reservoir and it rejects heat to a low temperature reservoir. So here those temperatures are given. For Carnot engine, those temperatures are not changing, but in real heat engines they are changing. Okay, so for Carnot heat engine, this high temperature one is 900 Kelvin, low one is 300 Kelvin. Now the the engine work output, so work output from the engine is used to drive a Carnot refrigerator. Okay, now you are taking up heat from a lower temperature reservoir and putting it to a high temperature reservoir with the help of external work. So that external work is coming from the heat engine and that is driving the refrigerator, that removes heat from the cool space, and the temperature is given to be minus 15 degrees centigrade, and the rate of heat removal is also given, that is 250 kilojoule per minute. And this heat, I mean the refrigerator sucks up heat from the low temperature reservoir, and by adding by the help of the work input, it rejects that heat to the environment 300 Kelvin. Okay, so the heat engine is dumping the heat to the same environment, which is 300 Kelvin atmosphere, and the refrigerator also is dumping the heat to the same environment 300 Kelvin. So this whole process, you have to determine the rate of heat supplied to the heat engine. Okay, so it is not given, the work output is given, the different temperatures of the reservoirs are given, but the heat supplied to the heat engine you have to find out. Okay, and the second thing you need to find is the total rate of heat rejection to the environment. So both the heat engine as well as the refrigerator are contributing to the heat rejection to the environment, and you have to find out the total amount of heat rejected to the environment. So if we do the draw this schematic diagram, you can see on your left hand side it is the heat engine that is taking up heat from 900 Kelvin source, okay, at certain rate QH, which we don't know, which we need to find out. And then what it does, it dumps QL amount of heat to the 300 Kelvin reservoir, and in the process it gives out some work which is W, and this work itself is acting as the input to the refrigerator. That is also a Carnot refrigerator. Okay, so the work here is equal for heat engine output and the refrigerator input. And that refrigerator, what is it doing? It is taking up heat from a low temperature reservoir, which is 15 degrees centigrade, and the rate of which is given 250 kilojoule per minute, and that refrigerator is dumping the heat at QHR rate to the 300 Kelvin reservoir as well. So here what we do know is this 250 kilojoule per minute we know, but this QH heat engine, QL heat engine, QHR refrigerator, these things we don't know. Okay, but the connection we know, that work output from heat engine and work input to the refrigerator are equal. Okay, so for the refrigerator, Q dot L is given, so we can find out what heat or what work input it will require. Okay, so the coefficient of performance of a refrigerator And for a Carnot refrigerator, we can write it as 1 over TH by TL minus 1. You have learned this equation or this formula from the chapter 6. Okay. So now for the refrigerator also we know both TH and TL. TH is nothing but the high temperature reservoir where the refrigerator is dumping heat, that is 300 Kelvin, and the other one is where it is sucking heat from, that is minus 15 degrees centigrade. If you convert it to Kelvin, it will be 258 Kelvin. Okay, divide minus 1. So by doing this calculation, you will find the coefficient of performance for the Carnot refrigerator will be 6.143. Okay, so now for the refrigerator, we know what is the heat input and we also know the coefficient of performance. So just from the definition of coefficient of performance, we can find out what is the work input to the refrigerator. Okay, so W dot net in R, that means the net work input to the Carnot refrigerator is nothing but Q dot L, that means at what rate you are sucking heat from the low temperature reservoir divided by the coefficient of performance for that refrigerator. Okay, so we know both the values now, and we'll find the work input is 40.7 kilojoule per minute. We did not change the unit to kilowatt or anything. We just kept the same kilojoule per minute for the time being. Okay, now we know that all this work that is coming into the refrigerator side, Carnot refrigerator, is coming from the Carnot heat engine itself. So this W dot net in R will be equal to W dot net out for the heat engine, HE. Okay, and the same value. So that means the heat engine work output is also 40.7 kilojoule per minute. Okay, now we can also find out for Carnot heat engine what is the thermal efficiency, and thermal efficiency depends only on the reservoir temperatures for Carnot engine only. Okay, so we can find out 1 minus TL by TH, that's the thermal efficiency of the Carnot heat engine. And here we know the low temperature reservoir is 300 Kelvin, high temperature reservoir is 900 Kelvin. Okay, so the thermal efficiency is 0.6667 or 2/3 or 66.67%. Okay, any form you can express it. Usually it is expressed in percent. Okay, so now when we know the thermal efficiency of this heat engine and we also know the work input, what we can find? The heat input rate to the heat engine, which is nothing but the work output divided by the thermal efficiency. Okay, so both of which we now know, and we can find it is to be 61.1 kilojoule per minute, and that's the first answer. First query was what is the heat input to the heat engine, and that is 61.1 kilojoule per minute. Now the second one asks what is the total heat that you are rejecting to the environment, which is at 300 Kelvin. Now we don't have to go to the individual contribution. What we can do, we can take a control volume which covers both the heat engine as well as the refrigerator. Okay, so here this dotted line is the control volume which covers both of them, so that the whole work transfer that is happening between the heat engine and the refrigerator is not contributing anything to the control volume analysis, because it's inside. Whenever you have a work or heat interaction that's crossing the boundary of a control volume, then only it appears in the balance equation. Okay, so here all these there are two inlet for the heat. Okay, here, and there are two outlet here and here. and both these two outlets will contribute to the environmental heat rejection. So if we apply first law, what comes has to go out. Okay, so the total heat rejected is nothing but the total heat input. So total heat input we know now, the Q dot LR, that means the heat sucked out by the refrigerator from the refrigerated space, which is given to be 250 kilojoule per minute, and the other one, the heat input to the heat engine, that's Q dot H heat engine. That's also we just found out as part of the first query, that's 61.1 kilojoule per minute. So if you sum them up, you will get the total heat rejected amount. That's 311.1 kilojoule per minute. So here we have, for the second part, we don't have to apply the second law. Just the first law energy analysis across a control volume will give us everything. Okay, so as no work interaction is crossing the boundary, we are only matching what is the heat interactions, what heat is getting rejected and what heat is input to the control volume. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the second problem. So in this problem we have talked about a Carnot heat engine and a Carnot refrigerator. Both of them we can find out the coefficient of performance and the thermal efficiency. And for Carnot engine, this is the speciality that the efficiency or the coefficient of performance, they depend only on the reservoir temperatures. Okay, and that's why we could find all of them, and the heat interactions was the common link between these two devices, the heat engine and the refrigerator. So this gives us a comprehensive view how to look at the Carnot cycles and how the different directions of heat interactions happen for a heat engine or a refrigerator. Okay, so let us go to the next problem, which is again from chapter 6, and now we will talk about a heat pump. So and this is not a Carnot heat pump but a real heat pump. Okay, so a heat pump with R134A is used to keep a space at 25 degrees centigrade by absorbing heat from the from a geothermal water. Okay, so geothermal water means what? At the below the earth crust, the there is heat from the core of the core of our planet Earth. Okay, and that is why we get a much hotter temperature if we use geothermal water. So this so heat is getting absorbed from the geothermal water that enters the evaporator at 60 degrees centigrade. Okay, so you can see if you take the water from the bottom of the from the lower part of the ground, then you will get at higher temperature, that's 60 degrees centigrade here, and the rate is 0.065 kg per second. Okay, and it lives at 40 degrees centigrade. Okay, so you can see that heat is getting rejected to the evaporator because the water temperature coming from 60 degree to 40 degree. Now refrigerant enters the evaporator at 12 degrees centigrade with a quality of 15%. Okay, so the refrigerant conditions are given so that you know the property values for that state, and lives at the same pressure as saturated vapor. Okay, so pressure does not change for the evaporator or for the refrigerant in the evaporator, and it lives as saturated vapor. If the compressor consumes 1.6 kilowatt of power, Okay, the compressor, I will see where the compressor comes into picture. We have to determine the mass flow rate of refrigerant, the rate of heat supply, the coefficient of performance, which is often shorthand by COP, and the minimum power input to the compressor. So these quantities we will see one by one, but first look at the schematic diagram of the process. So what we have is the heart of the refrigeration cycle is the evaporator, right? Because that's the space we want to uh, keep cooled. But this is a heat pump, so basically the heat that we reject to the through the condenser, that's the goal. Okay, we'll see what is the difference between heat pump and refrigerator later, but the principle of work is the same. Okay, and where do we input the work? Because whenever the second law says that from a low temperature reservoir, which is the evaporator, if you want to take heat out and reject it to a high temperature reservoir, which is the condenser, you have to put some work in. You cannot just do it, okay, without work input. So so work input is given in the compressor. Okay, and here you see on your left hand side we have an expansion valve, and that's where the throttling happens. This I discussed in earlier problems, that the hissing sound that you see or hear in case of household refrigerant, that's where the throttling happens. Heat pump also the same working principle. So whenever you have a high pressure liquid and you want to bring it to a low pressure state, you have to throttle it. Okay, and that's where the throttling happens in that expansion valve. Okay, so this is the evaporator from which the heat is sucked in, and it is going to the through the compressor where the pressure is increased, and in the condenser the heat is rejected to the environment Q dot H at a rate of Q dot H, and then that high pressure refrigerant is moved through the expansion valve or through the throttling process, where the pressure comes down to the evaporator level, and this cycle goes on. So again, this is a steady flow process, and here to make things complicated, what we have, the evaporator, in the evaporator the refrigerant is actually taking heat from a geothermal water pipeline. Okay, so the geothermal water is coming at 60 degrees centigrade and going out at 40 degrees centigrade. So if we know this is a steady flow process, right? And there are two fluid flows. One is refrigerant through this cycle, compressor, condenser, throttling, or the expansion valve and evaporator, and with certain mass flow rate, let's say that's m dot r for the refrigerant, and in the evaporator we have another flow which is of water, that's m dot w. Okay, and they are never in contact. They exchange heat between themselves, but they don't exchange mass. So water and refrigerant are not getting mixed in this evaporator, but they do exchange heat. Okay, so that's the condition that we are looking at here. Okay, so if we draw a schematic, we can see this left hand side figure where the refrigerator or heat pump is taking heat from this low temperature reservoir and dumping it to high temperature reservoir TH, and W in, the work input is put in, and there will be some work lost through the expansion valve as well as through other heat leakage. So this is a non-Carnot refrigeration cycle. If it is Carnot refrigeration cycle, then we can assume that there is no work lost and these temperatures are can also give you the COP. So what we need to find here, the relationship between these mass flow rates MW and MR, okay, or M dot W and M dot R. So if you just look at the evaporator, this 1 and 2, these are the condition or the state of the refrigerant, and this W1 and W2, these are the state of the water at inlet W1 and at outlet, which is W2. Okay, so what we can write, the whatever heat exchange happens in this evaporator, that means the water will lose heat to the refrigerant steam. So the amount of heat will be same for the refrigerant stream and the water stream. So this Q dot L will be equal to M dot R H2 minus H1. So this is the amount of heat that the refrigerant stream will gain. Okay, and the same amount will be lost from the water stream. So M dot W into HW1 minus HW2. Okay, so now this HW1 minus HW2, you can write it in terms of the specific heat of water Cp into TW1 minus TW2. Okay, there is no phase change happening, so you can do this through a specific heat. That makes life simpler. If there is a phase change, then you have to look up the saturated vapor table, even superheated vapor table if needs be, and find out what is the enthalpy of W at state W1 and W2. But here there is no phase change, so that is why we just took the enthalpy, the specific heat of water and multiplied it with the difference in temperature. Okay, so everything we know here, the mass flow rate of water is given, the Cp value you can look up, and you should remember this value as well, 4.2 kilojoule per kgK, and the temperature difference, which is 20 degrees centigrade or 20 Kelvin. Okay, so this Q dot L you can find out to be 5.437 kilowatt. Now the same amount of heat is gained by the refrigerant steam, right? So M dot R H2 minus H1, that will be equal to 5.437 kilowatt, right? But here we don't know what is the value of H1 or H2, right? So for that, the state conditions are given, which we have to utilize. So state condition, state 1 is given that T1 is 12 degrees centigrade and the quality is 0.15 or 15%. Okay, so we can find out what is the pressure at state 1, that's the saturated pressure at 12 degrees centigrade, that's 443.3 kilopascal. And you can also find out at this condition or this quality what would be the enthalpy by doing HF plus X into HFG. So I am not doing it here. We can directly write H1 will be 96.54 kilojoule per kilogram. Okay, and for state 2, what is given? State 2, pressure is not changing. So P2 will be equal to P1, that's 443.3 kilopascal, and no pressure drop is assumed here. Okay, so usually there is a pressure drop, but here for ideal case, we can assume the pressure drop is negligible. And it is also given at the exit, the pressure or the vapor condition will be saturated vapor. Okay, so X2 will be 1. So H2 will be nothing but Hg at this particular saturation pressure, 443.3 kilopascal, right? So H2 will be 257.33 kilojoule per kg. So now we know H1 as well as H2, so we can find what is the M dot R, because H1, H2 we know, and the right hand side Q dot L we know. So if we do that, what we find? Okay, M dot R we can directly find as 0.0338 kg per second, and that's your first answer. Okay, what is the mass flow rate of refrigerant? Now second one is what is the heating load? That means Q dot H, how much heat the heat pump is putting through the condenser. Now how you can find out? You can put the first law in, you can apply the first law for the control volume around the whole thing, and you can write, you can see that the work lost through the expansion valve is neglected. Okay, nothing is given, no information is given to find it out. So, and usually it is extremely small, that's why we can neglect it. Okay, so what you can write, the first law gives us the heat output, that's Q dot H equal to heat input Q dot L plus work input. So right hand side is the input into the control volume and left hand side is the output, and they have to match. And this W in through the compressor is given 1.6 kilowatt, and Q dot L we just found out 5.437 kilowatt. So the total heat rejected to the condenser is 7.04 kilowatt, and that's your second answer. Okay, now the third one is what is the coefficient of performance, and what is the coefficient of performance for a heat pump? That's the Q dot H divided by W dot in. So what heat you are rejecting at high temperature reservoir and what work input you have to use. So both of them we know, 7.04 kilowatt and 1.6 kilowatt. So the coefficient of performance is 4.4, and it's unitless because it's a ratio of same units. Now the last part, it asks what is the minimum power input. Okay, so minimum power input, that means when the coefficient of performance is maximum, with minimum work input you can put maximum heat to the high temperature reservoir. Okay, so we have to look for maximum COP, and maximum COP is obtained when the heat pump runs as a Carnot heat pump. So we have to find out the Carnot COP. So COP max will be 1 over 1 minus TL by TH. That's the low temperature reservoir by high temperature reservoir temperature. Okay, so the TL is given 285. Okay, 15 degrees centigrade. Sorry, this is 12 degrees centigrade, and the high temperature reservoir is just the ambient 298. So the maximum COP you can find is 22.9. So see the difference. So the maximum COP is 22.9, but actually you are getting 4.4. So the Carnot COP is much higher than what you are actually realizing. Okay, so to get the minimum power input, we have to find the COP max, which is COP Carnot. So this work input minimum will be the heat output that you require divided by the maximum COP. That's 22.9. Okay, and the heat input is same, 7.04 kilowatt. So the minimum work is 0.307 kilowatt, and that's our fourth answer. Okay, so you can see the actual is 1.6 kilowatt, and the minimum work that you require is 0.307 kilowatt. So see how big is this. So if we but the problem is the Carnot heat engine or the Carnot heat pump we never can realize, and that is why the work input is much higher. So in this tutorial we have taken 2 problems from chapter 5 and 2 problems from chapter 6. Chapter 6 is the second law of thermodynamics, and we have looked up couple of problems from for the Carnot heat engine, Carnot COP, what do they mean, and all these things. Okay, So thank you very much for your attention. We will continue with the chapter 6 in the next tutorial as well. Okay, thank you very much.